Usually when you're looking at your chart, you're focusing on the planets, what sign they sit in and what house they inhabit. But what about those other areas of your chart? You know, the blank spots? Are these ghost towns in your chart things that will haunt you? Or are they places you can totally ignore? Or is there more to them than that? In this video, we're talking about empty houses in your natal chart. We're going to learn what an empty house is and what it isn't. And also when an empty house might play a bigger role in your natal chart than it might seem at first glance. So let's go. Before we dive in, I need to let you know that on our website, thehappymystic.com, we have an entire article series based on every single empty house in a natal chart. And each of our empty house articles has a free worksheet and reflection page download so that you can dive deeper into every single one of your vacant houses. You can find the link to those articles in the description. So the meaning of empty houses in your natal chart is pretty obvious. It's just a house in your chart that's empty. But should this be something to worry about? Are you destined to lag behind or struggle in the areas of life that that empty house represents? Absolutely not. And I think there are 3 things that you should know about your empty houses. The first thing is that there's only about 10 planets that many astrologers even consider in a natal chart reading. Sure, some use some asteroids or planetoids.
All the oids.
But even then, you have 12 houses in your natal chart and only around 10 planets to consider, and some change. The math on that is pretty simple. Odds are you are going to have some houses without planets in them. And while a house with the planet sitting in it indicates that yes, that house probably will play an important role in your life, hold up on thinking that an empty house automatically won't, because there's still a few ways that even an empty house can be super influential. And that takes us to point number 2. There are still planets tied to your empty house, because every house has 1 or 2 planets that are said to rule it. So the planetary ruler or rulers of your empty house will throw some of its planetary influence in its direction. Also, the house cusp or the boundary line of your empty house will sit in a sign, and that sign has 1 or 2 planetary rulers. So your empty house will also have planetary authority reigning over it from those planets as well. But even if you take planets completely out of the equation, there's still one more way that an empty house can be incredibly important. So the third thing that you should keep in mind when thinking about your empty houses is that angular houses will always be vital in your chart reading no matter what. There are 4 houses in astrology that are referred to as angular houses, and those are the 1st, 4th, 10th, and 7th houses in your chart. They are so important that each of them has been given their own special name, with the 1st house being your ascendant, the 4th house being your nadir, the 7th house is your descendant, and the 10th house is your midheaven. Each of these houses represents an important piece of your astrological puzzle. To describe them simply, they are your outward persona, the most private version of yourself, who you think you are not, and your social role and the role that you want to play in the world. The 4 angular houses are so important that they will be read in an astrological reading, whether you have any planets present in them or not. So if you want to investigate an empty house and see what insight it might hold for you, here's one way you could approach it. First, check to see if this is one of those angular houses, the 1st, 4th, 7th, or 10th house. If so, this one is extra important. The second step is to see what sign your empty house lands in. The traits and qualities of that sign will offer you clues as to how you might experience that house. Or it might show you how you can approach that house to maybe get through it a little bit easier. Next, find the planetary ruler of that sign in your chart. See what house and sign that planet sits in. These characteristics and areas of life will be mixed in and combined with the details of your empty house. And if the sign of your empty house has 2 planetary rulers, just repeat that for the other planet, adding in a whole nother layer of complexity and dimension to your empty house. The next step is to figure out which planet rules your empty house and then track that guy down in your chart as well. And again, the style of that planet sign and experiences of its house will be stirred into the pot and add another layer of complexity to how you experience this vacant house of yours. Keep investigating your empty houses using our empty house worksheets and reflection pages. But next, you might want to consider what is the opposite of an empty house in your natal chart. And you can find out what that is in our next video. So have a great day and take care.